The Christmas gathering at Mom and Dad's house in Westchester had been carefully orchestrated to showcase what Dad called the family's upward trajectory. Everything from the imported wine to the catered dinner reflected his obsession with projecting success. Dad sat at the head of the mahogany dining table wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, discussing his latest investment portfolio achievements with anyone willing to listen. "The diversification strategy has been absolutely brilliant," Dad announced, swirling his $300 bottle of Bordeaux. "My wealth management team at Goldman suggested reallocating 30% of our holdings into emerging markets, and the returns have exceeded every projection." Uncle Richard nodded approvingly from his position to Dad's right. "What kind of annual yield are you seeing on the international funds?" "Consistent 12 to 15%, Dad replied with obvious satisfaction. "The portfolio managers say they've rarely seen such sustained growth across multiple sectors simultaneously." He gestured grandly around the dining room, which had been recently renovated with marble countertops, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum. "This lifestyle doesn't happen by accident," Dad continued. "It requires sophisticated financial planning, strategic risk assessment, and the discipline to make intelligent long-term investment decisions." Mom beamed with pride from her seat beside him. "Harold's investment portfolio has grown by over 200% in just the past 3 years. 240% actually," Dad corrected with a modest smile. "The wealth advisors at Meridian Elite Capital have been absolutely phenomenal. They've constructed a portfolio that generates substantial passive income while maintaining aggressive growth potential." Cousin Michael leaned forward with genuine interest. "Meridian Elite Capital? I've heard they only work with ultra-high net worth clients." "Exactly," Dad nodded. "Minimum investment threshold is $10 million. They don't waste time with small accounts or unsophisticated investors." He pulled out his phone and opened what appeared to be a financial app, displaying impressive charts and numbers to anyone close enough to see. "Current portfolio value is sitting at approximately $75 million, generating roughly $850,000 in annual passive income. That's before capital gains, of course." The numbers drew impressed murmurs from around the table. I sat quietly at the far corner, still wearing the cheap blazer I'd bought at a discount store because I couldn't afford anything nicer on my $42,000 annual salary as a community college adjunct professor. "The key is understanding market dynamics," Dad explained, clearly enjoying his role as the family's financial expert. "Most people make emotional investment decisions based on fear or greed. Sophisticated investors like myself work with professional wealth managers who understand global economic trends." Aunt Susan looked genuinely amazed. $75 million. "Harold, I had no idea your portfolio had grown so substantially." "Conservative estimate, actually," Dad replied casually. "The real estate holdings alone are worth probably another 20 to 25 million, but I don't count those as liquid investments." He gestured around the house with obvious pride. "This property has appreciated nearly 40% since we purchased it 5 years ago. The wealth advisors suggested we could leverage the equity for additional investment opportunities, but we're already generating more passive income than we can reasonably spend." Brother-in-law Tom whistled appreciatively. "What kind of investment vehicles are producing those returns?" Dad launched into detailed explanations of hedge fund allocations, international bond portfolios, private equity partnerships, and something called alternative investment strategies that apparently only ultra-wealthy individuals could access. "The private wealth management team handles all the complex analysis," Dad explained. "They provide quarterly reports breaking down performance metrics, risk assessments, and optimization recommendations. It's incredibly sophisticated." He showed his phone to several family members, displaying what appeared to be professional portfolio statements with impressive graphs and projections. "The beauty of working with Meridian Elite Capital is that they handle everything. Asset allocation, tax optimization, estate planning integration, even concierge services for major purchases." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "They helped us negotiate the terms for this house renovation. Apparently having a $75 million portfolio gives you access to exclusive contractor networks and bulk purchasing agreements. Everything becomes easier when you have serious money," Dad agreed. The investment advisors can arrange financing for virtually anything: vacation homes, luxury vehicles, art collections, even business acquisitions. He turned his attention to me for the first time all evening, his expression mixing pity with mild embarrassment. David, you should really consider letting me introduce you to some basic financial planning concepts. I know your professor's salary doesn't leave much room for investments, but even small amounts can grow over time with proper management. I'm doing okay with my budget, I replied quietly. Dad chuckled condescendingly. Son, I'm talking about real wealth building. Your community college teaching position might seem adequate for day-to-day expenses, but it's not a strategy for long-term financial security. Harold's right, Uncle Richard chimed in. Academic salaries are notoriously limited. You need to think about diversifying your income streams. Dad nodded sagely. The problem with academic careers is that they're essentially charity work disguised as employment. You're trading potential wealth for the satisfaction of helping people, which is admirable but not practical. He gestured around the elegant dining room. This lifestyle requires serious money, David. Investment portfolios, passive income generation, strategic wealth accumulation. Things that are simply impossible on a professor's salary. I understand, I said calmly. Do you though? Dad pressed. Because I sometimes worry that you don't fully grasp the financial realities of adult life. He pulled up another screen on his phone, showing what appeared to be expense calculations. This dinner tonight cost approximately $800 for ingredients and catering. The wine we're drinking retails for $300 per bottle. The flowers on the table were $150. The renovation on this dining room was $85,000. Dad looked directly at me with what he probably thought was fatherly concern. David, that's more than twice your annual salary just for this one room. You're living in a completely different economic universe from the rest of this family. Mom touched Dad's arm gently. Harold, maybe we shouldn't focus on money during Christmas dinner. Actually, Christmas is the perfect time to discuss financial realities, Dad replied. David needs to understand that his lifestyle choices have consequences. He chose academic work over wealth building, and this is the result. He gestured between himself and me, highlighting the obvious contrast. I'm wearing a suit that cost $3,500. David's jacket probably came from a discount store. I drive a car worth more than his annual salary. I own investment properties worth more than he'll earn in his entire career. The room fell uncomfortably silent. Several family members looked embarrassed by Dad's bluntness. The point isn't to make David feel bad, Dad continued, though his tone suggested otherwise. The point is to illustrate the power of intelligent financial decision-making. He returned to his portfolio display, clearly proud of the numbers. Meridian Elite Capital's wealth managers project continued growth of 8 to 12% annually. At that rate, my portfolio should reach approximately $120 million within 5 years. What kind of lifestyle does that level of wealth support? Cousin Michael asked. Dad's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Complete financial freedom. Private jets, luxury vacation properties, exclusive investment opportunities. The wealth advisors say we could easily support annual expenses of $2 to $3 million without touching the principal. He glanced at me meaningfully. That's roughly 70 times David's current salary, just in annual spending money. The investment opportunities at that wealth level become extraordinary, Mom added. Harold's advisors have mentioned private equity deals, venture capital funds, even opportunities to purchase entire companies. Dad nodded approvingly. When you have serious money, money makes money exponentially. The compound returns on a $75 million portfolio create wealth faster than most people can imagine. As the evening progressed, Dad continued detailing his investment successes, his relationship with elite wealth managers, and his family's trajectory toward even greater financial achievement. Every story somehow circled back to the impressive returns generated by his Meridian Elite Capital portfolio. The quarterly statements are absolutely remarkable, Dad said as Mom served dessert. Sometimes I show them to friends just to watch their reactions. Most people have never seen investment returns at this scale. After dinner, as family members gathered in the living room for coffee and conversation, Dad pulled out what appeared to be official-looking documents from his briefcase. I wanted to share something exciting with everyone, he announced. Meridian Elite Capital invited me to participate in their exclusive ultra-high net worth advisory council. He displayed what looked like an embossed certificate and several bound reports. They only extend invitations to clients with portfolios exceeding $50 million. It's essentially a private investment club where we collaborate on major financial strategies. Uncle Richard examined the documents with obvious admiration. This looks incredibly prestigious, Harold. The networking opportunities alone are worth millions, Dad explained. Last month's meeting included hedge fund managers, real estate moguls, technology entrepreneurs, even a few minor celebrities. He turned to address me directly. David, I know this kind of wealth seems impossible from your perspective, but I want you to understand that it's achievable with the right mindset and professional guidance. I appreciate the advice, I said politely. Dad's expression grew more serious. Son, I'm concerned about your long-term financial security. Community college teaching is essentially a dead-end career path. You're 32 years old with virtually no assets, no investment portfolio, no wealth-building strategy. Harold, Mom warned gently. No, this needs to be said, Dad continued. David is family and family takes care of each other. But there are limits to what we can do if he refuses to make intelligent financial decisions. He gestured around the beautifully appointed room. You'll never afford this lifestyle on a professor's salary, David. The sooner you accept that reality, the sooner you can start making better choices. Several family members nodded in agreement, though they looked uncomfortable with Dad's directness. Maybe David could transition into private sector work, Aunt Susan suggested diplomatically. Use his education background in corporate training or consulting. Excellent suggestion, Dad agreed enthusiastically. Corporate consulting can be quite lucrative. Much more realistic than pretending academic work will ever generate serious wealth. He pulled up another screen on his phone, apparently showing salary comparison data. Senior consultants at major firms earn $150,000 to $300,000 annually. Still nowhere near investment-level wealth, but at least it's respectable income. I'm content with teaching, I said calmly. Dad shook his head with obvious frustration. David, contentment is a luxury for people who can afford it. You're living paycheck to paycheck while convincing yourself that financial security doesn't matter. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his landscaped grounds. This property, this lifestyle, this level of financial freedom, it's the result of making smart decisions consistently over many years. Working with professional wealth managers, taking calculated risks, prioritizing wealth building over personal satisfaction. Dad turned back to face me directly. You've chosen personal satisfaction over financial security, and that's fine. But don't pretend the consequences don't exist. You'll spend your entire life struggling with money while the rest of this family enjoys genuine prosperity. I understand your perspective, I replied quietly. I hope you do, Dad said. Because at some point the family can't keep subsidizing poor financial decisions. We love you, David, but we can't indefinitely support someone who refuses to help himself. The room fell silent. Mom looked mortified by Dad's bluntness, but several other family members nodded in agreement. Maybe we should change the subject, Mom suggested weakly. Actually, I think this conversation needed to happen, Dad replied. David needs to understand his position in this family's financial hierarchy. He returned to his seat and pulled up his portfolio app again. Meridian Elite Capital's wealth managers project my net worth will exceed $100 million within 3 years. David's net worth will probably never exceed $50,000. Those are just mathematical realities. As the evening wound down and family members began saying their goodbyes, Dad made a point of shaking hands with everyone and discussing their various business successes and investment strategies. When he reached me, his expression was a mixture of disappointment and resignation. David, I hope you'll consider what we discussed tonight. It's never too late to change course, but time is definitely working against you. I'll think about it, I said. Good. And remember, if you ever decide to get serious about wealth building, I'd be happy to introduce you to some entry-level financial advisors. Not Meridian Elite Capital, obviously, they don't work with small accounts, but there are firms that specialize in helping people with limited resources. I drove home to my modest apartment in a 20-year-old Honda Civic, listening to Dad's words echoing in my head. The contrast between his $75 million lifestyle and my community college professor existence couldn't have been more stark. After arriving home, I poured myself a glass of water and sat down at my computer. Dad's humiliation had been thorough and public, exactly as I'd expected. He'd been building toward this moment for months, gradually establishing himself as the family's financial success story while positioning me as the well-meaning but economically naive son who'd chosen passion over profit. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "David, I hope tonight's conversation didn't seem harsh. Sometimes tough love is necessary. You're intelligent enough to build real wealth if you're willing to make sacrifices. The choice is yours." I typed back simply, "Thanks for the advice." Then I opened my secure laptop and accessed my private investment management interface. Meridian Elite Capital appeared on the screen, not as Dad's wealth management firm, but as a subsidiary of my own investment holding company. I composed a brief message to my portfolio management team. "Execute immediate liquidation of account H. Martinez 4471 effective at market open tomorrow. All positions should be closed and assets transferred to standard settlement procedures. Client notification per standard protocol." The message was delivered at 11:43 p.m. I reviewed the account details one final time. Harold Martinez, portfolio value $75,247,000, had been generating impressive returns for exactly 3 years and 4 months, the same duration as his most aggressive bragging phase about his investment success. At 7:15 a.m. the next morning, my phone started ringing. Dad's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came at 7:32. Then 7:58. By 9:45, I had 11 missed calls and 15 increasingly panicked text messages. The first voicemail was confused but controlled. "David, something very strange is happening with my investment portfolio. Meridian Elite Capital is saying there's some kind of system error. Could you call me back when you get this?" The second voicemail 20 minutes later was noticeably more agitated. "David, I need you to call me immediately. Something's wrong with my accounts. The wealth managers are saying there's been some kind of liquidation, but that's impossible. I never authorized any transactions." By the third voicemail, Dad was clearly panicking. "David, please call me right back. This is an emergency. My entire portfolio is gone. $75 million just disappeared overnight. I don't understand what's happening." The text messages showed a clear progression from confusion to desperation. "David, call me, something's wrong with the investments. This is urgent, I need help understanding what happened. The wealth managers won't explain anything. David, please call me back, I'm scared. I think someone stole my money. $75 million is just gone. David, I don't know what to do." At 10:20 a.m. Mom called. "David, honey, your father is having some kind of panic attack. Something terrible happened with his investments overnight. All his money disappeared. Do you know anything about financial law? Maybe there's someone you could call." "I don't really understand sophisticated investment management," I replied honestly. "He worked so hard building that portfolio. I can't understand how $75 million can just vanish without any explanation." At 11:45 a.m., Dad called again. This time I answered. "David," he sobbed into the phone, his voice completely broken. "Thank God you picked up. Something horrible happened. Someone stole my entire life savings." "What do you mean stolen?" I asked calmly. "My investment portfolio, all $75 million, it's gone. Completely liquidated overnight. Meridian Elite Capital is saying I authorized the transactions, but that's impossible. I never signed anything authorizing a complete liquidation." I could hear him hyperventilating between sentences. "Dad, slow down. What exactly did the wealth managers tell you?" "They said the account holder exercised a full liquidation clause. But David, I am the account holder. I never requested any liquidation. I don't even understand how someone could access my accounts without my authorization." "That does sound unusual," I agreed. "The customer service representatives keep saying the liquidation was authorized by the primary account administrator, but I don't know what that means. I thought I was the primary administrator." Dad was quiet for a moment, then continued in a smaller voice. "David, I think this might be connected to identity theft. Someone must have stolen my personal information and convinced Meridian Elite Capital to liquidate my entire portfolio. Have you contacted the police? The wealth managers say it's not theft because the liquidation was authorized by someone with administrative access to my account. But David, I never gave anyone else access. I don't understand how this is possible. At 2:15 p.m. Uncle Richard called. David, your father called me crying. Apparently his investment portfolio disappeared overnight. He's talking about identity theft and fraud. Do you have any idea what might have happened? Dad knows much more about financial matters than I do, I said. This whole situation sounds extremely suspicious. Legitimate investment firms don't just liquidate $75 million without proper authorization procedures. At 3:30 p.m., my administrative assistant at Meridian Elite Capital called to confirm completion of the liquidation. All positions in account H. Martinez 4471 have been successfully liquidated, she reported. Total liquidation value was $75,247,832.17. All funds have been transferred to your primary holding account as requested. Any complications with the transaction? None. The account holder had signed standard administrative agreements when the account was established 3 years ago. The liquidation clause was clearly outlined in the original documentation. What about client notification? Mr. Martinez received automatic notifications at each stage of the liquidation process, as required by our standard procedures. He also has access to all original account agreements through our client portal. That evening, Dad called one final time. David, I need to ask you something and please don't take this personally. Okay. Last night at dinner when I was talking about lifestyle and financial security, you seemed, I don't know, unusually calm. Most people would have been angry or defensive when criticized so publicly. I wasn't angry, I said truthfully. But weren't you hurt? When I basically announced that you'd never achieve financial success or be able to afford a decent lifestyle. I considered this carefully. Dad, you were sharing your perspective based on your understanding of the situation. I can respect that. He was quiet for a long moment. David, do you think this could be some kind of cosmic justice? Like the universe punishing me for being cruel to you about money? I don't really believe in cosmic justice, I replied. Because if this is karma, I want you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant to humiliate you. I was proud of what I'd accomplished and I wanted you to understand the importance of financial planning. Dad, you don't need to apologize for being successful. But I wasn't actually successful, he cried. It was all fake. Someone was manipulating my accounts this whole time. They let me think I was a brilliant investor, then they took everything away just to destroy me. I'm sorry this happened to you. The worst part is facing everyone who heard me bragging last night. I have to explain that there never was a $75 million portfolio, that I'm not the financial genius I pretended to be. He started crying again. David, will you help me figure out what to do next? I know I said terrible things about your financial situation, but you're the only person I trust to give me honest advice. Of course I'll help however I can. Thank you. And David? I'm sorry I said you'd never afford a decent lifestyle. That was cruel and probably wrong. The next week, Dad met with several financial advisors and attorneys trying to understand what had happened to his investment portfolio. Eventually, someone explained that his original account agreements had included administrative clauses he'd apparently signed without fully understanding. The investigation revealed that Meridian Elite Capital was a legitimate investment firm, but Dad's specific account had been established under a structure that allowed for administrative liquidation without his direct authorization. The lawyers said everything was technically legal, though the account structure was unusual. Dad never recovered financially from the loss. He had to sell the house in Westchester and most of his possessions to cover debts he'd accumulated based on his assumed wealth. The family's lifestyle changed dramatically almost overnight. But he also became a more humble and thoughtful person. He stopped making comments about other people's financial situations and began expressing genuine appreciation for non-monetary forms of success. At our next family gathering held in Mom and Dad's much smaller apartment, Dad pulled me aside. David, I've been thinking about our conversation that night. About lifestyle and financial security. What about it? I realize now that I was measuring everything by the wrong standards. You chose work that gives you satisfaction and meaning. That's actually much more valuable than I understood. He looked around the modest apartment with something that might have been contentment. Maybe this is what I deserve. And maybe what you have is what actually matters. I never told Dad that I own Meridian Elite Capital, or that his investment portfolio had been funded by my own assets as an elaborate 3-year lesson in humility. Some truths are more valuable when they remain hidden. The $75 million returned to my primary investment fund, where it continued generating returns through legitimate business ventures and carefully managed portfolios. I kept working at the community college, living in my modest apartment and driving my 20-year-old Honda. Family gatherings became more meaningful after that. Less focus on money, more focus on relationships. Dad learned to measure success differently, and I learned that sometimes the most expensive gifts are the ones that teach people what truly matters.
We've detected unusual signals from grid section 7B on Mars, Dr. Phillips announced, his voice echoing through mission control. They seem to be emanating from the water discovery site. I watched from my station as my stepsister Amanda's face turned pale. She knew exactly what grid section 7B meant. It was where I had discovered the first evidence of liquid water before she had me removed from the project. My name is Olivia Parker, and 2 weeks ago, I was the lead signal analyst for NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Project. That was until Amanda, the newly appointed mission director, convinced the board I was emotionally unstable and unfit for such a critical position. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me as I watched her frantically tap at her tablet, trying to make sense of the incoming data. The signals were unlike anything we'd seen before. Complex patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the Martian water's subsurface movements. Dr. Foster, Amanda called out, her voice tight with barely controlled panic, "Can you make anything of these patterns?" The older scientist shook his head, his forehead creased with confusion. "These aren't standard electromagnetic frequencies. The algorithm isn't recognizing any known patterns." Of course it wasn't. The signals were encoded using a system I had developed specifically for the Mars Water Project. A system I hadn't shared with anyone yet when Amanda orchestrated my removal. I leaned back in my chair, remembering the day everything changed. I had just confirmed the presence of liquid water beneath the Martian surface using a specialized frequency detection method I'd spent years developing. It was the breakthrough we'd been waiting for, proof that Mars could potentially support life. "This is impossible," I had whispered, double-checking my readings. "Amanda, look at this." My stepsister had rushed over, her eyes widening as she saw the data. But instead of sharing my excitement, she had quickly composed herself and said, "I'll take it from here, Olivia. Why don't you take a break?" I should have known something was wrong by the way she couldn't meet my eyes. Within hours, she had called an emergency board meeting, presenting my discovery as her own while simultaneously questioning my mental stability. "Dr. Parker has been showing signs of extreme stress," she had told them, her voice dripping with fake concern. "She's been working excessive hours, seeing patterns where none exist. I'm worried she's becoming a liability to the mission." Now, watching the chaos unfold in mission control, I felt a strange sense of calm. The signals were getting stronger, more insistent. Whatever was happening beneath the Martian surface, it was trying to tell us something. "The frequency is changing," someone shouted. It's like it's responding to our probe's presence." Amanda spun around, her perfectly maintained composure finally cracking. "That's not possible. Run a full diagnostic on all systems." I knew what they would find. Nothing wrong with the systems, just an increasingly complex series of signals that only I could understand. The encoding method I developed wasn't just about detecting water. It was about understanding its behavior, its interaction with the Martian environment, and potentially, its relationship with something we hadn't even imagined yet. "Ms. Parker." Dr. Phillips' voice cut through my thoughts. "You were working on signal analysis before your departure. Any insights?" Before I could respond, Amanda interrupted. "She's not authorized to access this data anymore. We'll figure it out ourselves." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. The stakes were too high now. This wasn't just about professional rivalry or family dynamics. This was about potentially the biggest discovery in human history. "Actually," I said, standing up slowly, "I think I might be able to help." I walked over to the main display, aware of every eye in the room following me. "Those patterns you're seeing, they're not random. They're encoded using a specialized algorithm I developed for the water detection project. The room fell silent. Amanda's face went from pale to red. You never submitted any documentation about a new algorithm, she said accusingly. I was going to. I replied calmly, the day you had me removed from the project. Dr. Phillips stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding any political concerns. Can you decode these signals? I nodded, my heart racing despite my outward calm. I can. But I'll need full access restored to my systems and complete autonomy in my analysis. Absolutely not. Amanda protested. She's trying to manipulate the situation. But as if to punctuate my point, the signals suddenly intensified, creating patterns across every screen in mission control. The message was clear: something was happening on Mars, something unprecedented, and I was the only one who could understand what it was trying to tell us. Dr. Phillips looked at Amanda, then at me, then at the increasingly complex display of signals. His decision was visible on his face before he even spoke. Restore Dr. Parker's access. Full clearance immediately. As I sat down at my hold station, I could feel Amanda's glare burning into my back. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth was about to come out, and no amount of office politics or family drama could stop it. The signals from Mars continued their mysterious dance across my screen, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I allowed myself to smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about being exactly who you are, exactly when it matters most. Let's see what Mars is trying to tell us, I whispered, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I began to decode the message that would change everything. For the next 12 hours, I immersed myself in the signals while mission control buzzed with nervous energy around me. The patterns were more complex than anything I'd seen before, suggesting that whatever we discovered wasn't just water, it was something far more intriguing. Dr. Phillips, I called out, not taking my eyes off the screen. Look at this frequency modulation. The water isn't just present, it's moving in coordinated patterns. He leaned over my shoulder, his breath catching as he saw the data. This is unlike anything we've ever recorded on Mars. Amanda hovered nearby, trying to maintain her authority while clearly feeling it slip away. It's probably just subsurface geological activity, she said dismissively, but her voice lacked conviction. I pulled up a 3-dimensional model of the signal patterns. Now look at the regularity. These aren't random movements. There's a distinct sequence repeating every 47 minutes. The room fell silent as I manipulated the model, showing how the water's movement corresponded with the signals we were receiving. Years of research, countless nights spent developing my algorithm. It was all leading to this moment. The water, I explained, my voice steady despite my racing heart, seems to be flowing through what appears to be artificial channels. Artificial? Amanda scoffed. That's impossible. You're seeing what you want to see. Dr. Phillips held up his hand, silencing her. Continue, Dr. Parker. I brought up another screen showing the decoded signal patterns. These aren't just electromagnetic frequencies. They're carrying information, specific sequences that repeat and evolve. It's almost like what? Dr. Phillips leaned closer. Like a language, I finished quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's face had gone from skeptical to ashen. She knew what this meant. If I was right, this wasn't just about finding water on Mars. This was about finding evidence of intelligent design, possibly even ancient Martian technology. We need to inform the board immediately, Dr. Phillips said, reaching for his phone. Wait. Amanda stepped forward. We can't go public with this yet. We need more verification, more tests. Like the verification you needed before removing me from the project? I asked calmly, never taking my eyes off the data streams. Before she could respond, new signals started pouring in. The patterns were changing, becoming more urgent. I frantically typed, trying to keep up with the incoming data. Something's happening, I announced, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The water movement is accelerating. The channels, they're activating in sequence. The main screen filled with streaming data, the patterns now visible to everyone in the room. Even those who couldn't decode the signals could see that something extraordinary was occurring. Dr. Parker, Dr. Phillips's voice was tense. What exactly are we looking at? I took a deep breath, knowing my next words would change everything. I believe we're watching an ancient Martian system reactivate. The water isn't just present, it's part of something bigger, Some kind of mechanism that's been dormant until now. Amanda stepped forward, her composure finally cracking completely. You can't prove any of this. This is exactly why we removed you. These wild theories without proper evidence. Actually, I interrupted, pulling up my original research files. I can prove it. These are my complete findings from before you had me removed, including preliminary evidence of the channel system. Evidence you buried when you took credit for the water discovery. The room went completely still. Every eye turned to Amanda, who stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and growing horror. Is this true? Dr. Phillips asked her quietly. Before she could respond, the signals suddenly intensified. New patterns emerged, more complex than before. I leaned forward, my heart pounding as I decoded them in real time. The system, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, it's not just channels. It's a network. An entire underground network of interconnected waterways, and it's all coming online. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a natural phenomenon. This was technology, ancient Martian technology, awakening after who knows how many millennia. How long have you known about this? Dr. Phillips asked Amanda, his voice hard. She stumbled over her words. I just thought. She didn't know, I said, finally turning to face them. She saw the water discovery data but didn't understand what it meant. She couldn't decode the signals, couldn't see the patterns. That's why she needed me gone, because she knew I was close to something big, but she couldn't figure out what it was. Dr. Phillips straightened up, his decision clear on his face. Amanda, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Dr. Parker will be resuming her position as lead analyst, effective immediately. Amanda opened her mouth to protest, but at that moment, the signals pulsed again, stronger than ever. Everyone's attention snapped back to the screens, where Mars was telling us its ancient story, one decoded signal at a time. I settled back into my chair, a mix of vindication and excitement coursing through me. This was bigger than Amanda's betrayal, bigger than office politics or family drama. This was about uncovering secrets that had waited millions of years to be found. Let's see what else Mars has been hiding, I murmured, diving back into the data streams. The truth was finally emerging, and I was the only one who could understand its language. 1 month after the initial signal detection, I stood before the International Space Science Committee, presenting our findings. The room was packed with the world's leading scientists, all eagerly leaning forward as I revealed what we discovered beneath the Martian surface. The network, I explained, gesturing to the holographic model floating above the stage, spans approximately 300 square kilometers. It's an interconnected system of channels, chambers, and what appear to be processing stations, all designed to move and potentially purify water. The audience sat in stunned silence as I showed them the animated sequence of the network's activation. The blue lines representing water flow pulsed rhythmically, following patterns we were still working to fully understand. Most remarkably, I continued, the system appears to be self-maintaining. It has mechanisms for preventing freezing, filtering sediment, and even redirecting flow based on pressure changes. The engineering is, well, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. From the corner of my eye, I could see Amanda sitting in the back row. She'd been demoted to research assistant after the investigation revealed the full extent of her deception. Her attempt to steal my discovery had backfired spectacularly, leading instead to the biggest breakthrough in Mars exploration history. Dr. Parker, one of the committee members, leaned forward. What are the implications of this discovery? I smiled, pulling up new data on the display. Beyond proving the existence of ancient Martian civilization, the technology itself could revolutionize how we approach water management on Earth. The filtration systems alone are centuries ahead of our current capabilities. The questions flew fast after that. How old was the system? Preliminary dating suggested at least 300,000 years. Was it still fully functional? Remarkably, yes, though we were still learning its capabilities. Could we replicate the technology? We were already working on it. After the presentation, Dr. Phillips found me in the hallway. Outstanding work, Olivia, he said, beaming with pride. NASA's approved your proposal for a dedicated research team. You'll have full autonomy and resources to continue studying the network. Thank you, I replied, still somewhat overwhelmed by how much had changed. There's so much more to learn. The signals, they're not just about water management. I think they're trying to tell us something about the civilization that built this. And you'll be the one to figure it out, he said confidently. By the way, your sister requested a transfer to the Jupiter program. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Amanda's betrayal had hurt, but in the end, it had led to something extraordinary. Sometimes, I said, people's worst intentions can lead to the best outcomes. Later that evening, as I sat in my new office overlooking the NASA campus, I received an unexpected email from Amanda. Olivia. I know it's too late for apologies, but I want you to know that I understand now. I was so focused on advancement that I couldn't see the bigger picture. What you've discovered, it's changed everything. Not just for science, but for me too. I've learned a hard lesson about integrity and recognition. Amanda. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I turned to my monitors, where the Martian signals continued their ancient dance. The network was still revealing new secrets every day, each discovery more fascinating than the last. Just yesterday, we'd found what appeared to be a control room, its systems still operational after hundreds of thousands of years. My phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Phillips. Meeting tomorrow at 900. Bringing in international teams. Your discovery is changing the future of space exploration. I smiled, watching the signal patterns pulse across my screen. The water network wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a message from an ancient civilization, proving we weren't alone in our quest to understand the universe. Amanda's betrayal had nearly derailed everything, but in the end, the truth had found its way to the surface, just like the water flowing through those ancient Martian channels. Sometimes the path to discovery isn't straight or fair, but if you stay true to your work and trust in your abilities, the universe has a way of revealing its secrets to those who can truly understand them. I turned back to my computer and began typing a reply to Amanda. The signals are getting stronger. There's still so much to learn. Maybe it's time we all started listening more carefully to Mars and to each other. The future stretched out before me, filled with possibilities I had only dreamed of. Mars was speaking to us, and I was ready to listen. I'm leaving you for Amanda, Michael announced casually, as if he were commenting on the weather. He stood in my home office doorway, looking oddly pleased with himself. And before you start drama about divorce settlements or splitting assets, let me be clear, there won't be any of that. I'm just moving in with her. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing financial reports for the investment firm I managed. At 42, I'd spent 15 years building a life with this man. And here he was, throwing it all away for his 23-year-old secretary. Nothing to say, Elizabeth. He smirked, clearly expecting tears or begging. Usually you have an opinion about everything. I kept my expression neutral as I closed my laptop. How long have you been planning this, Michael? He walked into my office now, confidence radiating from his expensive suit and freshly styled hair. Does it matter? Amanda understands me in ways you never could. She's young, exciting. Everything you're not anymore. I nodded slowly, opening my desk drawer. And you thought this through? The legal implications. There won't be any legal implications, he scoffed. I'm not filing for divorce. I'm just leaving. You can't force me to sign papers or split anything. I've checked. Interesting, I said, pulling out a thick envelope. So you've forgotten about this? His smug expression faltered slightly as I removed the document. What's that? The prenuptial agreement you signed 15 years ago. I replied calmly. The one your father insisted on, remember? To protect the family assets? The color drained from his face. That was years ago. It can't still be valid. Oh, but it is. I slid the document across my desk. Section 3 is particularly relevant. In case of abandonment or infidelity, all joint assets are to be split 70-30 in favor of the wronged party. There's also a fascinating clause about maintaining the standard of living. Michael snatched up the papers, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through them. You planned this, he accused. You kept this all these years, waiting. I couldn't help but laugh. I planned for you to cheat with your secretary, to announce you're abandoning our marriage. Give yourself some credit, Michael. This level of stupidity is entirely your own achievement. You can't prove anything, he blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. It's my word against yours about Amanda. I opened my laptop again, turning it to face him. Actually, I have the emails between you and Amanda going back 6 months. The hotel receipts. The jewelry purchases. Did you really think I wouldn't notice $12,000 charged to our joint account at Tiffany's? The swagger was gone now, replaced by something between panic and rage. You've been spying on me? No, Michael. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. I knew something was wrong when you started working late every Tuesday and Thursday, the same nights the corporate card showed charges at the Golden Grove Hotel. He slumped into the chair across from my desk, the prenup clutched in his hand. What do you want? I want what I'm legally entitled to, I replied. The prenup makes it quite clear. We can do this quietly, quickly, and you can go live your exciting new life with Amanda. Or we can let my lawyers handle it, which will be considerably messier and more expensive. You're bluffing, he tried one last time. You wouldn't want people knowing about this. Your reputation. My reputation. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not the one having an affair with a secretary young enough to be my daughter. I'm not the one trying to abandon my marriage without proper legal proceedings. Would you like me to show you the social media response when my lawyers release the evidence? Michael's face had taken on a grayish tinge. The prenup slipped from his fingers onto my desk. I need time to think. You have 48 hours, I said, turning back to my laptop. After that, my lawyers will file the paperwork and things will become significantly more complicated. He stood up, his movements stiff. This isn't over. Actually, Michael, it is. It was over the moment you decided to throw away 15 years of marriage for someone who wasn't even born when we met. I looked him in the eye. I suggest you use these 48 hours wisely. Unlike you, I've already done my homework. As he walked out of my office, his shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt an odd sense of calm. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, consulting with lawyers, securing copies of all our financial records. While Michael had been planning his new life with Amanda, I'd been planning my defense. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. Sarah? Yes, he finally told me, just like we expected. No, he didn't take it well when I showed him the prenup. I smiled, remembering his face. You'll have the papers ready by Wednesday, perfect. What Michael didn't know was that the prenup was just the beginning. I had discovered something far more interesting in our financial records, something that would make him wish he'd just agreed to a simple divorce when he had the chance. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office, watching Sarah review the documents I brought. Her eyebrows rose higher with each page she turned. This is quite something, she said finally, looking up at me. You're sure about these transactions? I nodded, sliding another folder across her desk. 3 years of systematic fraud. Michael's been embezzling from his family's company, filtering money through fake consulting firms. Most of it's been going to offshore accounts. Sarah whistled softly, and his father has no idea. None. I took a sip of my coffee. Robert's been too busy expanding the business to notice his son's creative accounting. But once these records become part of the divorce proceedings, they'll have to be disclosed. Sarah finished, a slow smile spreading across her face. Elizabeth, you're either brilliant or terrifying. Possibly both. I had discovered the discrepancies purely by accident. One night, while Michael was at his regular late meeting with Amanda, I was reviewing our tax returns and noticed something odd. Small consulting payments, recurring monthly, to companies I'd never heard of. A little digging revealed these companies didn't exist. They were shells created to funnel money away from the family business. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. We need to talk. Dinner tonight? Already cracking, I murmured, showing Sarah the message. What are you going to do? She asked. Meet him, of course. Let's see what he offers before we show our full hand. That evening, I arrived at La Maison, our usual anniversary spot. Michael was already there, looking considerably less polished than yesterday. His expensive suit couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes or his nervous fidgeting. You look terrible, I observed, sitting down across from him. He ignored the comment. I've been thinking about what you said, about doing this quietly. Have you? I kept my tone neutral, signaling the waiter for a glass of wine. We could work something out, he said, leaning forward. A fair split. 50-50. You keep the beach house, I'll keep the city apartment. We both walk away with dignity. I couldn't help but laugh. That's your idea of fair? After what you've done? Be reasonable, Elizabeth, he hissed. You're not exactly in your prime anymore. This could be your last chance at a decent settlement. I took a slow sip of my wine, letting him stew in his desperation. You know what I find interesting, Michael? How a man who makes $200,000 a year can afford to buy his secretary a $12,000 necklace. Or how he manages multiple offshore accounts on that salary. His face went white. What are you talking about? Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I pulled out my phone, pulling up a spreadsheet. Shall we discuss Meridian Consulting? Or perhaps Global Solutions Partners? Fascinating companies. They don't seem to have any employees, offices, or actual business. But they've received millions in consulting fees from your family's firm. Michael's hand shook as he reached for his water glass. You're out of your depth. No, darling, you are. I showed him the screen. These transfers weren't exactly subtle. Your father's accountants will figure it out eventually. Unless what? He practically whispered. Unless we handle this divorce my way. The prenup split, plus a few additional terms. Sign the papers and these financial records stay private. Fight me, and they become part of the public court record. He slumped in his chair. You destroy the whole family business just to spite me. I'm not destroying anything, I replied calmly. You did that yourself when you decided to steal from your father while cheating with your secretary. I'm simply giving you a choice about how this ends. The waiter approached with menus, but Michael waved him away. What are your terms? I pulled an envelope from my bag. The prenup split, as mentioned. You sign over the city apartment and beach house to me. A very generous monthly alimony payment, which I'm sure you can afford given your additional income sources. And you resign from the company quietly, citing personal reasons. You want me to give up everything? His voice cracked. Not everything. You'll keep your freedom to be with Amanda. Although, I paused, checking my phone again. You might want to check in with her. Last I heard, she was getting quite cozy with a new intern in accounting. Apparently, you're not the only one who appreciates youth and excitement. Michael grabbed the envelope, his hands shaking as he opened it. I need time to review this with my lawyer. You have 24 hours, I said, standing up. After that, I have a meeting scheduled with your father. I'm sure he'd be very interested in reviewing these financial records. As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in months. Michael had underestimated me, assumed I was too naive or too afraid to fight back. He never realized that while he was playing around with his young secretary, I was carefully building a case that would bring his whole world crashing down. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael. You'll regret this. I smiled, typing my response. No, Michael. You already do. Michael waited until the last possible minute to respond to my message. He simply said, My office, 9 a.m., bringing my lawyer. I showed up 10 minutes early, wearing my best suit. My friend Sarah was with me, holding a briefcase full of documents enough to ruin Michael's career and maybe even start a criminal case. His office looked just like I remembered. Fancy and full of family photos that tried to make him seem loving and loyal. The irony was clear. Michael looked tired as he sat behind his desk. His lawyer, James Porter, stood by the window, trying to look confident but not doing a great job. They watched as Sarah and I sat down. Let's get to the point, James said. Michael agrees to most of your terms, with a few changes. Most? I asked. He's fine with the property and alimony, James explained. But asking him to quit the family business is too much. We want that part removed. Sarah opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Then maybe we should go over why that part is necessary. That won't be needed, Michael said quickly, too quickly. I leaned forward. Actually, it is. James, there's something Michael didn't tell you. Something about shady accounting and hidden money overseas. James turned to Michael. What is she talking about? Before Michael could answer, the door opened. His father, Robert, walked in holding a spreadsheet I recognized. I think she means this, Robert said seriously. Michael jumped up. Dad, what are you doing here? What I should have done a long time ago, paying attention, Robert replied. Elizabeth sent me this last night. Our accountants checked it out this morning. Michael's face twisted in anger. You went to my father? You. Careful, Sarah warned. Everything said here is on record. Robert stood behind me. The board is meeting today. You don't need to resign, Michael. You're fired. Michael sank back in his chair. Dad, please, I can explain. Explain what? Robert snapped. That you stole from us? Lied to your wife? Left a paper trail like an amateur? James coughed. Given this, maybe we should pause to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I cut in. Michael signs the divorce papers today. If he does, I won't press fraud charges. You can't prove it. Michael tried again. Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. She doesn't have to. I'll press charges if you don't sign. It's up to you, son. The next hour flew by. Michael signed everything with a shaky hand. He didn't even read the documents. By 10 a.m., it was over. Our 15-year marriage ended with a few signatures. As he and his lawyer left, Robert looked at me. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I should have seen this coming. I shook my head. We both trusted him. That's not your fault. He hesitated, then smiled a little. You're still family. Actually, we need someone new to lead financial oversight, someone sharp, who notices everything. I laughed. Are you offering me Michael's old job? No, he said. I'm offering you the job you've always deserved. Michael only had the title. You have the talent. 3 months later, I sat in my new office, Michael's old one, but now fully redecorated. The company was bouncing back after the scandal, mostly because we'd kept the worst parts quiet. Michael had moved into a small apartment. His girlfriend Amanda had dumped him for an intern. That part still made me smile. There was a knock on the door. Sarah peeked in, grinning. Guess who I just heard from? Who? Michael's lawyer. He wants to lower the alimony. Says he can't afford the payments. Let me guess. Entry-level jobs don't pay like executive ones. He's a junior accountant at a tiny firm, she said. The irony is perfect. Send the usual reply. Request denied. Request denied. When Sarah left, I walked to the window. Life was better than ever. I had the beach house, a city apartment I loved, and a job I earned on my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Board meeting at 2. Bring the reports. And Elizabeth? Thanks for saving the company. I smiled, grabbed my files, and headed to the meeting. As I walked past the front desk, where Amanda once worked, I nodded to the new secretary, a smart woman in her 50s. I'd made sure Michael's type wouldn't be hired again. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rising above, getting better, and moving on. Michael tried to leave me with nothing. Instead, he lost everything, and I gained more than I ever imagined. The best part? He destroyed himself. I just made sure he didn't take me down with him.